Okay. I actually got this to work now. But, hello, and welcome to whatever this was gonna be. If I go like this, and it fucks up, I am checking my Discord chat, because I have a lot written down here, so... I think the the first point I want to make... It's probably gonna be the title of the video, honestly. But I saw a Daryl Talks Game video, and it really made me think a lot about shit. So, the idea of waking up in a body that isn't yours, or what is it like to wake up in a body that isn't yours? I just think that's really fascinating. A lot of people don't think too hard about things like Freaky Friday, for example, would be an example, or something like that. Oh, my arm is freaking out. But it's pretty interesting. There's a nice book by fuck, hold on, I have the name written down somewhere, but I don't remember exactly where. Where are you? I should have had this before. It's on me. Is it not here? Maybe it's over here. Ah, Shuzo Oshimi. Yeah, in the Inside Mario book. It's a very good read, and I enjoy the works that he's created. I watched a lot of videos on stuff like that. Okay. It's an interesting concept, waking up in a body that isn't yours, and especially for someone like me, it's a fun, like, how do other people think about this kind of thing, and like this abstract kind of body horror, but not really body horror kind of thing. It's interesting. I'll probably have videos in the description about every single like talking point. If I could, I'd put like timestamps. I can still do timestamps, but I can't put sections in the video, which is annoying. I'm not bothered enough yet. But I feel like waking up in a body that isn't your own is a pretty scary thing. Waking up in a place that isn't your own, it can be pretty scary, but it can also be an interesting insight into someone else's world, reality, you know? Like there's this one YouTube comment. I had a dream that I woke up in an apartment that wasn't mine in the middle of the night, in the dead of the night. I remember navigating through their living room without turning on the light. The only light that came in and reflected off the beer cans. The only light that came in and reflected off beer cans. Off old beer cans. An old 2000 TV and a fishbowl was coming from the open balcony. The view was of blue neon skyscrapers. I could hear this part of the album echo in the air. I spent the rest of the dream enjoying the view, and as the sun slowly started to rise, I can't speak. Sorry. Sometimes I wonder if alternate realities exist. I often wonder if I've ever visited one in my dreams. It's really interesting. I really like shit like that. Dreams are a very good insight into the self and the person, I guess. A lot of dreams I've had are they're either really normal or really fucked up, and there's no in between. Sorry, I keep moving around a lot. Helps me think. I'll do this as well. A nice moody atmosphere. But it's very fun to think about, and a lot of people don't really think about the same shit. Mm, oh fuck, I'm done here now. uh, oh, okay, there we go. But it's like, if you think about it on a deeper level, that could be a really interesting way to get outside your own perspective and put yourself in the shoes of another person, for example. And it's like, it's what I like to try to do. If someone's going through a tough time, or if someone's going through something that I can't really understand, it's just like, well, what are they going through? And how does this affect them? And how, like, in their day to day life, how would this, like, fuck them up? Kind of flows nicely. That, like, YouTube comment. Who's it by? Let me see. Vantablack 8468. Yeah, I forgot what the video was, but it's a really good comment. I really like shit like that. But it transitions nicely into another talking point I want to talk about, which is like past lives. And does past lives exist? For me, I think it does because it's more interesting that way. That's kind of the only way I can put it. More fun and more abstract. Makes a lot of things like deja vu more of an interesting talking point. And it's not just like, oh, this is a weird feeling. There's also yimasu, I think, which is seeing into the future, which some people do in like dreams or daydreams, just random feelings, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure like most people have had that feeling once or twice. Um, especially for someone like me, past lives is such an interesting thing to talk about. And a lot of people like me believe in that kind of thing because it doesn't make sense. The brain fills in what it doesn't have, basically. Uh, mm. A lot of talking points that I have here are very. Uh, and I could talk about them for fucking ages, and I might eventually. There's one point that I want to talk about, and there was like nihilism and uh, solipsism again. Cause I talked about solipsism a bit before, but never really like, I don't know. I kind of just firing things off, which is I'm kind of doing now with other shit, but I'm just talking, seeing where it goes. Solipsism is the idea that you are the only cognitive person in the world, basically. And it kind of goes into the observer theory, which is kind of like narcissism and shit like that. But solipsism is really interesting. But it kind of only goes as far as interesting philosophy. Because if you actually think about it into a day life, and everyone else around you is an NPC or something like that, it's kind of silly. Because if you're the only cognitive person, then that means that everything that you've said to somebody or every connection that you've had is just kind of made up, really. And a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, I'm so smart." It's like, no, it just makes you seem silly. Because it's also kind of not like I talked about it before as well. But the dead internet theory is the the idea that the entire internet is a oh like an auto generative AI, I believe it was, and it was everything that you've ever experienced on the internet is just a thing of that auto generative AI, and that's also kind of silly. It kind of all ties into that like you are the observer of the universe kind of philosophy. Mm. Like there's only one true observer or something like that. It's bit silly. Mm. But going back to what I was talking about, nihilism is uh I've seen it a lot more recently. But it's kind of the ultimate crux. I guess not crux is not the right word, but it's like the ultimate evolution of pessimism. And it's basically taking what Friedrich Nietzsche said and muddying the waters a bit or not understanding correctly. It's kind of like people not understanding a work like Fight Club or American Psycho and taking it to be even more toxic and towards other people and all that just because you can. Uh, they think that everything sucks and everything will suck until the very end, like until you like die and then that is your freedom, and it's a very bleak worldview. It's very silly because they took the God is dead and we have killed him, and they kind of just took that and nothing else out of the criticisms and kind of thoughts Nietzsche had about, well, religion, philosophy, and all that. Because it's a really there's muddied waters of every philosopher. Like even if you get down to like kind of psychologists and I forgot what the psychoanalysts, Freud, Jung, all that. They have not so great shit in their past. What they said. I mean, you can take away the good things, I'd say. Yeah. The criticisms and like you should think more about religion than you already do. You shouldn't just take everything at face value, if I remember correctly, which is a good takeaway. And obviously, everybody sees things differently, and everyone will get a different interpretation out of what someone said, and that's valid. Like as for like Freud and Jung, I do like the whole collective unconsciousness thing. It's a really interesting thing to think about. And that's basically it's a thing in the middle, not really of else. I don't know where that came from. It's a thing in Asia where, especially like Japan and China, where it's like you feed into this bigger collective unconsciousness of things like trauma and stuff. Like generational trauma would be a part of collective unconsciousness. So if there's like scare attack or something, I don't want to say the word because I don't want to get the video nuked. But if it's something like that, and then that carries on for ages down the line, and that hate and resentment, that would go into the collective unconsciousness of like Japan, China, etc. And it's a really interesting thing to bring into the West, and that's what Jung did. And he obviously has the diagraph of the self, which is a completely different thing. But I could go on ages about that. I have so many things to talk about with that, and I might. But practically, like in a thing like Chainsaw Man, right, where you have these devils that are feared by so many people, that is collective anxiety, collective unconsciousness. It's how much these people fear this one thing. And it's so interesting to me. And a lot of shit like that is really interesting to me. But let me see if I can find that diagram of the self really quickly, because that would be a really good thing to talk about. Uh, bu- our entire information thing. Find it. Okay, so we have this. I can't pull it up, but you have this entire thing of the self. You have the outer world, which is like a circle. I can't really like. I'm in another tab. I can't do that, but I'm outlining it. There's a circle, and it has the outer world, and then on like above it, below it, you have the inner world. You have another circle, and then you have at the bottom it says the self, right? And then you have the the mana personality, the soul image, the shadow, the ego, and the persona in different circles. And the conscious, the collective unconscious, and the personal unconscious. But in a simpler way, there's consciousness, there's unconsciousness, and there's subconsciousness. And there's also the more updated one, which is the persona, the ego, the shadow, and the animus or anima, and then the self itself. And it's the shadows are really interesting, like thing to delve into, and the whole. I think actually, I think everything of this whole shit is really interesting to tap into, because obviously you have the Jungian and Freudian archetypes, more so Jungian than anything. You have these archetypes of what people are. It's kind of feeds into the persona and the ego and the shadow and shit. Because the persona is, I think it's like the mask you wear around everybody, around like most people, if I recall correctly. And then you have the ego, which is yourself. You have the shadow, or in Freudian psychology, that would be called the id. So it is practically, it is the darkest part of the self. It is all where all the kind of bestial and like darkest urges come from. That would be the shadow. And in something like JD, for example, the closest thing I can say, like it would be like kind of persecuted, I guess. But there'd also be like that would be incorporated into. It's really interesting how it connects. I always go back because personal experiences. But okay, back. Huh. But the shadow self within something like DID is an interesting thinking point, because it would be that, because usually this is my experience. Other people can have different experiences, but there's usually one that is more aggressive, or like I guess like tucked away and like doesn't like people or something like that. Sometimes it's abuser. Sometimes like takes the form of an abuser. Sometimes it takes like the form of a parental figure, which can be an abuser. But it's usually just a way to get out of certain situations, and that can like sometimes that's needed, even if it's a toxic thing, like a persecutor, which is like they're harsh, but it keeps them alive. And that could be like, oh, that's the shadow self from all of this. And it's like compartmentalization with DID, which is how it's kind of the basis of DID, really. I went over it in another video, but it's been like a year or so, and it's like the quick rundown of DID is that it's compartmentalization of the brain. So you have enough trauma. Well, the the structural model of dissociation of DID is that if someone actually wait, hold on. I drink drink first because this is a very I could go on and on about this. This is just rambling, but it's good to ramble off psychology shit and philosophy. Remember to hydrate. But basically, you have. Actually, hold on. Let me grab you real quick. Okay. So basically, at a young age, where you're like toddler stage, right? Or like very very young. Why it's these ego states exist: happy, sad, like lonely, etc. I mean, not lonely. Lonely doesn't really work for that, but it's like all these different things, right? And that's why you can have a kid that is crying his eyes out because he's missing somebody, and then the next moment, completely fine and like happy and all that. That's, yeah. As someone grows up, they form together into one collective person. But with enough trauma, either like CPTSD, which is multiple strands of different, not but multiple points of trauma building up, versus PTSD, which is one specific point of trauma. Which either or, if wait, if someone has enough trauma in their life at that young age, the brain does not know how to function, or if they think they are going to like die or something, the brain will like keep these ego states separate or create new ego states to keep the self alive, basically, right? Or the body alive. And it's, yeah. And what that looks like later on is that you can have so many different reflections of one person, whether that be, well, this one personality is a reflection of their abuser and they need that to keep themselves alive because they can't live without that back and forth, even though how toxic that is, right? Or it can be a family member, someone super important to them, etc. But usually it's just whatever is needed at that time will come out or appear, be at the same time, etc. Cause I could go through my Google Doc talking about it and stuff, and there's an entire like list of shit, of resources and things to help people, and I'm so really proud of that, and I'll probably put it in the description of this video. But yeah, it is something that I am personally uh, quite invested in talking about, along stuff like borderline personality disorder or other things that I personally I personally go through, or I know someone like multiple people who does, not just one person, obviously. But it's the borderline personality disorder and DID are kind of interlinked in the same way that PTSD can be is interlinked, but not in the same way. At least in my opinion, because a lot of what some people go through in DID is comorbid with like borderline personality disorder, BPD, and it's like the really fast, not really fast. That would be like the sudden sharp mood swings or the instability and like kind of what's the word, um like reckless behavior. That's a good way to put it. Reckless behavior and all that shit is there's a lot of comorbidity in that. I think it's like 30% of people who have GAD have borderline personality disorder or like a personality disorder. I don't remember, but it's something like that. Very high morbidity. Fuck against me. State at least. I could talk about it more. I just don't want to go all in. Because I'm already kind of going in with DID here. I will go over some things that are important to DID. It has been a while, so it's good to have a touch up, basically. Also, my voice is fucking dying. Holy shit. So I'll get some water here. Do you have... Well, okay, let's go over basics, right? You have fronting, which is basically whoever is currently around, right? So like take me for example. I would be the one who's fronting right now. If someone else was around at the same time, that would be co-fronting. And if someone's co-fronting, they can influence behaviors, thoughts, and like urges as well. To have a lot of like, oh, that's not like something that you would normally do or something like that. It can be just because of that. So, oh, that's not something you would normally say. It could be because of that. But also, well, okay, uh, alters personalities, like states, sides, whatever you want to call them. Uh, basically, alters can pretend to be whoever the main like fronter is, and like, because obviously, if you're working a 9 to 5 and you switch, which is basically one personality to another, even though I see personality in a very specific way because not in the full like self kind of way. I mean it in the identity kind of way. but if that makes sense. But basically, like if you switch and this alter comes out and acts completely different around colleagues and coworkers, that's not going to be good. So usually pretending to be the main fronter helps hide that. Although some, like, I know other people just don't, and they have to like, oh, I need to take a break for like 20-30 minutes to recover and come back, which I'm pretty sure you can do with DID in certain places. You have to have like certain papers for it, I believe. Sorry about that. Trying to think. So fronting, co-fronting, switching. Oh, okay. So like, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. There is uh like, if you have this alter and this alter, which aren't really, if they already work together so much, and if like it doesn't make sense for them to be apart, then you will sometimes merge together. And sometimes it can be more different. Sometimes it can just be like, oh, just how they are when they work together, etc. It's complicated. Usually the latter. Uh, but it's like merging and breaking happens, or splitting, I guess what it's called, just happens, and it kind of makes sense with the whole like compartmentalization thing of the brain because it keeps everything nice and compact. And when you have, like, let's say, like someone who has 20 alters, right? If you had 20 alters who are not like needed, the brain, like, or you have like 5 alters who are not needed at the moment and there's no, like, nothing going on, they will go dormant basically, or hibernate, whatever you want to call it. And that's completely fine because it's just, or they like rest for a week, because dormant is usually like weeks, months, years, even. Like you can go your entire, not your entire, but you can go like 20 years and then like have a alter just reemerge. It's just specific trauma points or specific things happening to you that causes that part in the back of your brain to appear to the front, and that's a pretty good way to like classify it. Yeah. Uh. Dun 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 dun. I think there's also like integration, but that's a very scary word for a lot of like plural people or systems. Because like person with DID doesn't really, it doesn't sound right. For a lot of people, system plural people, it's usually what a lot of people like to go with. And also, the reason it's dissociative identity disorder instead of multiple personality disorder is because DID focuses more on the dissociative aspects instead of the, oh, this person has multiple personalities, because multiple personalities can be a side effect of a lot of different things. And it doesn't just have to be dissociative. Like with, I mean, it can be, and it cannot be DID, but it's very like specific. Because you have people like having tulpas and shit, right? Like in the ye old days of the internet, and it's like, oh, they tripped out on hallucinogens and they created a new self inside of them, and you can do that with like I think it's like psychoactive drugs. I think it's called, and it's just forms a new self, taking parts out of yourself and into a different thing, right? Compartmentalization, kind of. Uh, but and that like obviously fucks people up severely. If you ever heard or like read about tulpa shit, that really fucks people up because you go from being a whole self into not a whole self, and that is a not a good process whatsoever. And obviously, I don't support tulpas. Like, and not like I don't support that whole thing, really. But like, let's go back to what I said about kind of uh like, uh just fix my hands a little bit. But going back to what I said about BPD and DID being comorbid, right? Multiple personalities can exist within borderline personality disorder in a very different way because it's not dissociative. So you don't black out as much or at all. You have memories of what happened, but you know you were acting weird or you're not being yourself, basically. As far as I can, like, as far as I've gathered. And it can be like that's obviously a scary thing to happen to a lot of people. But that's just how it is sometimes. And obviously, PPD is comorbid with a lot of different shit, so it makes sense that it's comorbid with something like DID. But specifically for DID, and also, uh, someone can have multiple identities and be completely fine. It the reason that it's so specific is that it has to be an issue that affects you daily or every other day, or it impacts your life in such a meaningful way like that, right? So if someone has multiple identities and they're just fine, that's just how it is. Because obviously, like with like integration, that's that can be how it is, but also people can be like a system later down the line, go through therapy and all that, and just be like and be fine afterwards. But with DID specifically, they still have the memory loss. They still have the like dissociative symptoms and all that. So, and that's what makes it that specific disorder. And also, like, you can say like, oh, that's because of PTSD stuff like that, which that would make sense. But I think the same can the same can be said for pretty much any dissociative like disorder. I got wildly off track there, but it's a good like brush up on TAD without a lot of personal things coming to the surface. Uh, Going back to before, um, ooh, Living versus being alive, which is a very good talking point. This is one of the questions that really gets the synapses firing. It really gets the brain thinking. So, if you like what you think of as living or being alive, right? Living is doing what you want to do in your life and kind of being who you want to be, right? Like, oh, I want to play guitar. And if you you just like push that away, work a 9 to 5, get home, sleep, wake up, repeat, that's not really living. That's just being alive, in my opinion. And chasing after what you want to do is like truly living. And that's what I always push people to do is chase after what you want to do. And probably the biggest thing is think about life more and think about what you're doing in life, how you're being in life, and just the world around you. It's a lot more interesting than a lot of people give it credit for. And a lot of people like it kind of feeds into nihilism or pessimism. It's just like, oh, the world sucks and nothing is good and nothing is ever interesting or nothing interesting happens or it's all just boring. People are boring, and it's like you just have to give it deeper thought and actually talk to people about their experiences and see how their experiences connect or abstract from yours. And you'll see, or just go out in nature. Take a long walk through like a park or just in general. It's a lot, it's good for the soul. Just going out, even just like sitting on like your porch, it's good for the soul. Getting fresh air is so fucking important. And that, like, I'm not one to talk, but it's here I am doing this, right? And people who would be nihilistic or like just kind of beyond that 9 to 5 grind and not really do anything that they want to. It's like, oh, I can't ever do something like this because I just don't have the time or the energy. I'm not smart enough. And so it's like, how do you know that if you haven't even started yet? If you haven't even tried? Someone out there will find what you find interesting. Someone out there will hear what you're saying and be like, "Oh shit, that's interesting." Like uh there's a playlist I have on here that I like to share with people, and it's purely mental health information, and it also has shit like the weekly slap, which is the thing Jay Schlatt does where he plays COD and talks about shit, gives advice, gives experiences, and it's good, right? And a lot of videos like that are in there. It I really find that important because a lot of people will sit on their ass and do nothing for 15 years of their life, and then like, oh, where'd that time go? I wish I did all this. Instead of doing that, do what you want to do. Like even if you have to push yourself, do what you want to do so you can have those experiences and so you can have that communication with people. And you can have that back and forth of all of that shit. Because people say, oh, I'm not good at talking to people. That gives you an icebreaker. That gives you something to talk about with people. Let's say, oh, I want to do jet skiing, right? And either you live out 15 years of your life, never do jet skiing, and you think, oh wow, I just wasted 15 years of my life doing nothing but this, where I could have been doing all this cool shit. Like, there is time in your life between everything else, even if it's a small moment. Not everybody can do jet skiing. It's just an example, right? even just YouTube videos, right? There is time there, but you have to set time for yourself and dedicate yourself to it, even if it's setting aside certain things. If you really want to do something, then stride for it and keep going. Because if you're talking to somebody, and it's like, oh, what'd you do? Blank, 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 and did nothing, right? And it's like, oh, I didn't really do anything. It's just like, oh, I rode a jet ski and that was really fun. Like I know someone who kind of strives to do shit. Like went to abandoned buildings, shit like that, right? That's interesting. That's something to talk about with other people. Even just like, oh, I hung out with somebody or I hung out with people doing this thing. It's good. Even if you're like an introvert or something like that, right? Talking to people can be good just to have that connection with other people. We're social beings after all. And there are some people who are loners and who don't really care about all that. But they have those experiences already to talk to other people or make videos, etc. That's just my thoughts on it. I'm very passionate about these things because I don't really have time for myself often. I have free time, but it is not exactly it. If you know, you know, and it's obvious if you think about it. But uh, basically, I don't have. I like sometimes my free time is cut short, or make a plan, gets cut short, and it's like okay, let's do it another time. That's fine. It's not a big deal, and I want to do that, and I want to play games with people. I want to hang out with people. I want to make these experiences, especially like something in VR chat. There's the Know Your Friends Better World, right? That's such a good, important thing for building that bond, right? Getting to know somebody. And it's kind of just general advice now. But yeah, it's that is, in my opinion, what it means to live instead of just being alive. And I will always strive to be a kind of symbol of living and doing whatever the fuck you want to do in life. Right? I mean, there's some things you can't do, but just do what you want to do and keep striding on. Right? You have dreams, then chase them. Because if you're young, especially like it's like, oh, I'm like I'm 21 and I don't have anything that I have considered a dream, right? Or if they have a dream, it's like, oh, I'm too old, and you're still like young technically. Like, you can still do all of this shit you want to do, right? So keep striding ahead for it. Even if it's streaming, right? Take some time out of your day, like set aside a specific day for it. Let's say like Wednesday, and then have a specific time, and then you'll know how, like, or like even on like a weekend, right? Like if you have a job, weekend, perfect, right? Saturday, perfect day for that. Or like it's you can just sit down, do it, get over with. Sunday, you can still hang out with people and do shit you want to do. Plus, like Friday, like you have that entire night. Like you could do like streams on Friday night. Like it's like you have this like little bit of time, and you can use it like wisely. Like I like to read sometimes, and I just set specific times for myself that I need to read or do shit like even just making videos like this. I set this time aside to do this. Because, like, I woke up late and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I ate food. I'm gonna do this. And then I'm probably gonna go sleep, back to sleep. And then fix that sleep schedule. And it's like, even if something is messy or broken in your life, it can be better. And it will get better eventually. But you have to put in that effort and you have to put in that work yourself, or else it will never get done. It's a very, very important thing. And if anybody is having difficulties in life, or if you have a friend, a colleague, a roommate, a partner, or spouse that is going through a really difficult time, especially with mental illnesses, you should get them professional help. Because you are not viable for their health, mentally or physically, and you're not viable for their emotions, right? If someone is off the fritz and they need you constantly, and it's like all like, and it feels like the world is ending if they don't talk to you. That's not good, and that is a toxic relationship. Or if it feels really high energy all the time, it's not good. I've had personal relationships like that, and it's not good, and it really draws out specific things, which makes it worse. But uh, it's the thing. It's like you should help people to help themselves instead of helping people or trying to help people in general, right? Because they're just gonna rely on you, and having someone rely on you can feel good, but it's like that takes a lot of strain on you, and who's going to help you with your issues, right? It's like, oh, I can handle it, but take care of yourself mentally, or get help yourself, because you are very important. Awesome. You are very important, and I think more people should know that. I had a person that was like, I forgot how old they were, but one of my Xbox buddies was like, hey, can you talk to this person for me, because they're going through a really difficult time. And instead of being like, oh shit, they're suicidal, so I should try to help them personally, I it's kind of why I'm called the most groups, or the local therapist or something. But I don't help people in the way that you would normally help people a lot of times. Like, I'm not gonna put, like, I don't want to put my like stability in danger because of this other person, right? Because me being unstable would cause a lot of issues, and it's good. I'm at a point where I'm some of the most stable I've ever been. But I helped them out with it's complicated how to explain it. But I basically just gave them advice and what to do, where to start to help themselves instead of continuously coming to me, right? Because if you have someone who continuously comes to you for advice, guidance, help, or to make themselves feel better, that's going to put more strain on you. So you need to give them advice or something to help themselves instead of having that, like, relying, right? That need to be, oh, it needs to be you personally, right? That's just going to feed into a toxic back and forth. and someone's gonna end up breaking eventually. I mean, that's how a lot of toxic relationships go. Yeah. I got another drink. But even if you have like a relationship that you think is going well, you don't need to be around each other 24/7, right? It doesn't need to be, oh my god, I love you so much. Like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. You're like the best thing ever, right? It can just be calm. Like, even if you just sit in silence for like a night, so you're having that time together. And if you love someone, it doesn't matter what you do, just as long as you're around them. And a lot of people fall into that trap of like falling for love bombing. You and whoa, whether they think that it's just they're so cool that someone falls for them instantly, or something else, or they genuinely believe that this person has fallen for them instantly, etc. It's it's a sad thing. But if you're in a bad spot, this is probably some of the best advice I can give. If you're in a bad spot and someone's making you feel worse, that's not a good. That's not a good like relationship. And relationship could be spouse, friend, parent, coworker, whatever. If you're like, if you say you're depressed or something like that, and someone says, "Oh, I'm depressed," like, "Oh, I'm depressed because of this," that's not like a good. That's like one upping basically. A lot of like, I try to relate to people sometimes, and it comes out as one upping, but it's a very different thing, right? Because if someone says to me that they're depressed, right, I would tell them what I what I do to help myself instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm more depressed than you are." Basically, it's not a good thing. Which is why I don't say, like, if I say what is wrong with me, I will usually have that with a. It could be worse, and a lot of people have it worse than I do, and I've met people who have it worse than I do. The same issue worse than I do. It's the thing. It's another thing to get over, right? And in other experiences, like if someone has manic depression, that could affect them worse than my issues, especially the one like interact with my daily life, right? They could be so depressed that they can't even get out of bed, and I over here, even though I have this issue and other issues, I can get up, brush my teeth, change my clothes, all that shit, right? Even if it's a kind of fucked up schedule sometimes, and sometimes sleep schedule fucks up, I'm still stable, right? And not a lot of people can say that. And sometimes I'm unstable, but it's like a lot of people have it worse than I do, and I try to like put that out there into the world of like don't try to one up somebody, like try to understand what somebody's going through, right? And also don't play down what you're going through. It's not good. Like for me, I'm not trying to play it down or anything. I know how fucking bad it is, but I'll always be like, you take the good with the bad, right? I'll always have the good and the bad about things. This is the kind of person I am. And it's the kind of the kind of shit that I want to help people have a similar mindset of, instead of my issues are always worse or always like less than someone else's, which is not how it works, right? Because everything that you go through, everything that you experience is completely different person to person. It's like, oh, that over there, that's red. Someone else can come over there. That's kind of like orange, or that's gray, right? It's just like, it just depends. And if you have like, I'm going back to it, but like, so you have someone who's depressed but getting through it, and they're using coping mechanisms healthily, getting through it. Like, you can't compare that to someone who is using unhealthy coping mechanisms and all of that, because they have the same thing, but the way it appears within them is different. And obviously, the way the brain works is so complicated that even one small thing can fuck everything up, right? Like something like ADHD can get so bad where it can mess with daily schedules and all of that. Like, it can be so bad that it like completely takes them out of like everything, right? Or like, oh, they'll say, oh, get like you should get this done here, right? Gone. Like that will probably be gone in some people, and that's okay. That's why reminders or sticky notes or post-it notes, anything is good. And if you have BPD or DAD or something like that, or ADHD, that is the trick, right? Have like a personal Discord server, have post-it notes, have like a notebook, have something that you can write down shit in and remember it. Or have like, even if it's there's no memory of it being there, right? And I know it's like hard because it's like, oh, how will I know? It's getting into that routine of it. Even if you forget sometimes, getting into that routine is so important because that's how you will remember it easier, and that is how you will be like, oh shit. Especially if you have it in the same spot every single time, you will be like, oh shit. And if you do it at the same time every day, like say you wake up, write something down, boom, you have that in your brain. Or if you do it every single night, you have that in your brain of that routine, even subconsciously. Wow, it's like a really deep. This is just my psychology, like psychology class. Uh, ooh, okay. Uh, Let me see. There is a. Let me move to another spot. There's a kind of thing that I like to talk about, and this is gonna get morbid. Uh, Turn this down. So everybody, like what I said about the brain, right? Everybody has their own idea of death, right? Have blaha here for emotional support. Oh, if I can fucking no, fuck. I put the blaha too close. The blowhigh. The blow. Okay. So everybody has their own. interpretation of what death is, right? And I should probably take a drink before this. Just gonna be smart about this and not fuck up my voice more than it already is. Dankeschön, Salem, for that one. I was gonna make an intro, but I forgot to. Fuck. But I guess now would be a better time than any, right? So, before we get into the topics about death and everything, actually, hold on. I could be smart about this, and I could just make that into a completely separate video than this one, because that is more. It's kind of a different talking point than this one. So I think I'll end this one here, and the next one will have an introduction, and then go over points about more about the afterlife, past lives, and what else do I have here? What is it like to die? What happens after death? And is it good to be reminded of death? And along with androids and transhumanism. Yeah. So this is just a good little thing. I was like, what is it like to wake up in a different body? What is it like to be in a different body? And all psychology shit. Fuck, I can't speak. And as for me, and my personal thoughts about what it is like to wake up in a different body, like what it's like to be in a body that you don't associate with, which personal things. Uh, I've had times where I feel like the body I live in is not my own. It's a common feeling, right? Or you wake up in the dead of night and it's like, oh wow, this doesn't feel right whatsoever. Or like reality, it doesn't feel right. And you look in the mirror and it's just like a kind of like a ghost staring back at you, right? But at the end of the day, it's still like it's like, oh, I see that, and that's still my body, right? Whereas someone else, like I've had dreams about waking up in different people's bodies and shit like that, and I've had the feeling of not being like in the correct body, shit like that. But it's like it's such a weird feeling because you have the sense of this is nowhere near correct, but you have to like keep going along with it, and it's really weird. But luckily, if like let's say personally, right? If you feel like you are not in your correct body, you can change that, right? And it's not like a dream or anything. And it's even though it's hard, even though it'll take time, you can change your body however you want to. And it kind of goes into transhumanism, which will be covered more in the. Maybe I could cover it now. Because transhumanism is the idea of changing your body with technology and stuff like AI and shit like that in a way that is helpful to you and helpful to people as a whole. So if you have like examples, it's not like a positive way, but you can if you have I saw some people talking about it in a video. I'll probably link that in the description. But they were just like, oh, I'll probably try something that if you have like I saw a video that if you have your like VR upside down, after a while it will like you'll get used to being like your like vision be upside down, even just in VR. And it's like, oh, that's such an interesting thing that you adapt yourself to that, and you could have like if you had VR with a larger like lens where it would go all like around here, and you could see your peripherals, or you could like if you like went push the FOV back of the lens, but like of the everything. You like you could, in theory, you could make yourself have this like wider FOV, either in just normally in VR or like IRL maybe. And a good way of explaining is like phantom sense. Right? Phantom sense normally is people who like have an amputated limb or something like that, right? They still get these feelings of this shit happening to them. So if they have their arm cut off, right? They could still feel their arm being there. They could feel like uh it squeezing some like a bottle or something like that, right? Or if you touch where the arm would be, they could still feel it. And like it with me, like I'm a good example. Oh, I could touch these and feel it a little bit, even though it's not attached to my body whatsoever. It's not as much as it used to be, but it's still like, especially because it's oh, my dragon is broken. But it's just a little thing like that. Or if my arm is like fucked up or something like that in VR, I could still feel it. It's the kind of thing. There's a I forgot what the video was. I don't remember who sent it to me. I need to find that video again. They had like a divider right between this person's arm and a fake arm that they could see, but they couldn't see the other arm. And they put a hammer down the fake arm, and they could feel it in their actual arm. And that's kind of how Phantom Sense works, except in VR. You have to kind of like be immersed in the reality of virtual reality to have that kind of effect. And I think like the normal test that people do is falling in VR, and it kind of fucks you up sometimes. But yeah, it's you can like train yourself to get Phantom Sense if I remember correctly, but it's like complex. But yeah, if I had someone like tap me in VR, I'd be able to feel it, shit like that. And sometimes it carries over to out of VR too, which is really weird. Like you'll have like a GIF or something like that, and I could feel it. It's like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Or like someone could like do this above my head, and I could be like, whoa, that's fucked up. Yeah, I'll end it here. Yeah, I think that's a good like encapsulation of my thoughts for this thing at least. Because yeah. So for now, bye bye, and I'll probably make the part two like after this, and after I give my voice a little bit of a rest. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next like lesson or rambling video or something like that.